We're ready.
All right, we are good to go, Lindsay. Thank you, Jeremy.
Welcome to the November 10th, 2021 BAR small virtual meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slangbrook, and the other board members present with me today are Glenn Gardner and Julia Martin. City staff present today are Kim Lavin, BARS Administrator, and Frankie Pinto, Senior Preservation Planner. The order of today's meeting is as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview by city staff for the benefit of the board and the public, followed by an applicant presentation, which will be limited to 10 minutes. Any and all presenters should state their name clearly for the board, and anyone associated with the project, owners, developers, designers, consultants should all speak during this period of time versus during public comment. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time, but by custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant presentation. This will be followed by public comment. If you are speaking as a member of the public, please state your name clearly first and last for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. And after that, there will be a 5-minute period of time within which the applicant may respond or clarify to anything raised during public comment or in the city staff comments. This is not a time to reopen the applicant's presentation, merely to respond or clarify. Following the 5-minute applicant response period, we will close public discussion in the applicant presentation and move to board discussion and a vote. At this time, the applicant's presentation is closed. You may be recognized by myself, the chair, by raising your hand. But again, this is only to clarify inaccurate information, not to state an opinion as to what you believe is inaccurate. Please be aware that our operating procedure will be changing upon the return to in-person meetings, the date of which is yet to be determined. Once the BRS returns to in-person meetings, we will discontinue the use of Zoom entirely, but continue live stream on our City of Charleston YouTube channel. The public may speak in person at the meeting or provide written comments in advance, and the deadline to submit written comments will be changing to 12 p.m. on the day prior to the meeting. Written comments will be provided to the board members in advance of the meeting and acknowledged by the chair during the agenda item. Please limit your comments today to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, and livability concerns, are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Now I'll turn it over to Kim for some virtual meeting protocol.
Thanks, Lindsay. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they're called on during public comment. The chat and Q&A functions have been disabled forever. Public comment, the applicants and all team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications here heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you've registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak. For each project, unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called. For the board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim for accuracy. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily moved from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they'll call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. Lastly, the results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR, and these proceedings are being recorded and broadcasted to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel.
Thank you, Kim. Agenda item number 1, 793 Rutledge Avenue.
793 Rutledge is requesting final approval for the replacement of a historic turn metal roof with shingles. The building's a category 4 in the north central neighborhood. It was built in 1929, and it's in the historic materials demolition perk. The owner is Greta Waters, and the applicant is Powell Roofing, although Miss Waters is the applicant presenting today. So here's an aerial for a little context, just south of Simmons Street. And here's some existing site photos. You can see the roof here between the trees. This is looking south on Rutledge and looking north. And here's some Sanborn maps from 1944 and 1955. And if Miss Waters wants to take it from here.
Been in my family since its originality, I guess. My grandfather bought it, built it. So the roof is original to the house. It's a tin roof. It is currently being excluded from my insurance because they do not feel that it's up to par. It needs to be replaced. Powell Roofing has gone up there and taken a look at it. There are numerous rust spots on that. I think that you can probably see from the photos that Mr. Powell has provided. It has been painted over the years. Literally go up there and mop silver paint over it. At this point, I feel that it needs to actually be replaced. As far as being congruent and harmonious with the neighbors and the neighboring properties on Rutledge Avenue, if anyone just takes a ride up or down that portion of Rutledge Avenue, most of the houses there are black shingled roofs, which is what I'd like to put on this house. So I don't see, number one, leaving this roof that is in such poor condition up there would be really a neighborly thing to do. I'm trying to keep the property up and to keep the value up. Number two, I think a new roof would make the house look better. Number three, I don't want any rain to come in on my tenants and cause damage to the walls, their original plaster. I'm trying to keep the property up and to make it look as good as possible. I don't know what else to say. You can look at the pictures and kind of see for yourself. I'm not doing anything else to the roof. I just want shingles on there. The neighboring houses are shingled, the houses across the street. I would say most of the houses on Rutledge Avenue have black shingles. I'd like to get this done now. I'd like to, be able to take it as a break on my taxes this year, honestly. And I'd like to be able to insure the house. So I don't know what else. I've provided you with 39 pages of documentation, and I'm just not sure where else we need to go with this. And I'm open to questions if you'd like to ask me something.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Do my fellow board members have any questions for Ms. Waters?
I would be curious if you have spoken with a roofer who's familiar with this type of roof. And I just know that I've seen turn metal roofs in worse condition that were able to be sort of repaired and to gain many more years of life. But did you have any discussions along those lines?
No, only with Powell Roofing, James Powell. He's replaced several roofs for me over the years, and other members of my family, as a matter of fact. The roof is old, it needs to come off, actually. And underneath it, you know, when you look back at how they built things back then, the part that roof is hooked onto is rather piecemeal wood. There may be some batten board up there. There may be some regular wood. It was kind of whatever they could find at the moment to put up there to nail that roof to. And I want all of that to come off and be replaced with, you know, shingles and sheathing. I don't know why in the world you'd want to keep that roof. What is it that you see that would make me want to keep that?
Any other board questions for Ms. Waters at this time?
Did you ask me something or you're asking the board?
Ms. Waters, yes, I was asking if the board members had any other questions for you.
I think Julia covered primarily the question that I had. I guess, and we can, I think we can give Ms. Waters a little bit of information in a minute in the board feedback about the quality of this old roof. But have you had active leaks? Have you had active damage? I mean, we do, as a board, see a lot of these old.
Yes, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Okay.
And they have been piecemealed back together over the years. I've got plaster walls in there that are original, and Lord knows I don't want those things wet. I've had to have walls placed, a ceiling repair in there because it was wet. It was wet by the chimney. I don't want any more leaky messes to have to clean up. I mean, a whole ceiling fell in and I had to get up there and replace it. So, and you know, I don't want that to come down on a person that's in there renting from me. Powell, you know, Mr. Powell has evaluated that. He does metal roofs. They're not exactly what that is. But actually, I think a metal roof would stick out like a sore thumb because of the neighboring houses. They're all black shingled. You know, I've kind of thought about going back with a silver metal roof. However, it really, I don't think it would blend in with what's up there now. And if anybody just rides down Rutledge Avenue and looks to the left or the right, you're going to see mostly black shingled roofs. So anyway, I don't want to keep repairing it. I don't want to go up there with Flex Seal. I don't want to go up there with Mr. Goopy Goop and cover it up and cover it up and mask it and cover it up. I know you get my point on that. You wouldn't want to have to keep doing that either.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Julia and Glenn, did y'all have any other questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim, I am not seeing any public comment here, but you may have it.
I've got it. We have April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation.
Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and who are you from? Who are you with?
Historic Charleston Foundation.
The Charleston Historic Foundation.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't catch who you are.
Here's my comment. Historic Charleston Foundation has reviewed the application for final approval for the replacement of the historic turn metal roof with shingles. This historic roofing material is a character defining feature of the house. To replace the roof with asphalt shingles downgrades the character of the house and does not meet the requirements of the historic materials demolition purview, which require replacement in kind if replacement is needed. We've not inspected the condition of the roof, but in reviewing the submitted photos, it appears that the roof can be repaired and coated with a Sealaflex product, which in our experience has a, maybe a 10-year lifespan at least to tide you over. And if the roof can't be repaired, we recommend that the replacement is standing seam to match the existing. Although we are very sympathetic to the applicant's situation, we respectfully cannot support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Frankie, do we have anyone else speaking on behalf of the public?
Sorry. Yes, we do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll with Preservation Society.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. And our comments are very much in line with that of Historic Charleston Foundation. We really appreciate the documentation provided in this submittal. We agree the historic turn metal roof is a character defining feature of this property. And while we hope the roof can be repaired, if it is in fact determined to be beyond repair, we encourage studying compatible replacement options in keeping with the character of the existing metal roof. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Frankie, do we have any other public comment?
That's all we have for this item.
Thank you. Okay, Kim, if you'll give city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thank you. The turn metal roof is an historic and character defining feature of this house and should be retained. These elements are important to the neighborhood and the integrity of the historic building. VAR is guided by the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Preservation, which encourages repair rather than replacement. Upon staff inspection, the roof appears to be in repairable condition. The VAR staff recognizes the challenges demo purview presents, and we are working with the community and city council to make projects like these more manageable for our citizens. So with all that said, we are recommending denial for replacement.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Waters, you have a period of time right now where you can respond to anything raised during the public comment or in the city staff comments.
Yeah, I do. Now, let's just say I go up there and I repair it. What do you want me to repair it with? What do you suggest? The Historic Charleston Foundation, are you still on there? I'm open to suggestions on what you want me to put up there.
Ms. Waters,
We can cover that, Lindsay, in the board discussion, I think, fairly.
Glenn, take the word right on
Are you talking about Flex Seal like that man on TV?
But Ms. Waters, we'll cover that in the board discussion. We'll address the different options, and actually I will encourage you after this meeting, if you still have questions. Historic Charleston Foundation and Preservation Society are wonderful resources. But at this time, you can, as opposed to asking questions, if you wanted to clarify or respond to anything raised during the public comment or in city staff comments, you can do so now, or we can move directly into board discussion. It's up to you.
You can move to board discussion, but there's no use for me to say anything else. You've made up your mind, so that's where we're at.
We'll still go through board discussion, Ms. Waters, but thank you. At this time, I'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Julia, are you okay with me going first?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So Ms. Waters, I fully understand and sympathize with owning and taking care of an old roof. And while I think sometimes it may seem foreign, there is a lot of value in having and maintaining an old roof, which this roof could possibly even outlast the new shingle roof that you might put on here at the end of 2021 if it's cared for properly. The roof from the photos and from my drive-by is an old roof, and it sounds like you're pretty clear that it's pretty close to original to when the house was built, that the panels of that roof material look fairly accurate to what you have told us. And I think it probably is original. and I guess my real sympathy is that I'm an owner of a similar vintage roof and have had to take care of it myself. And in fact, the roof on the back of my house is 1920 and was in much, much worse condition than this one when I came to be the caretaker of it. And I'm not a builder, but I've had a number of these roofs, and there are a good many people, albeit not every roofer around town, but there are multiple who are able to do exactly what needs to be done to this roof. And while I haven't been on it, I have looked at all of your photos, and I think the submittal is really thorough. And so my general recommendation would be that this roof would be scraped down. And I think they would probably neutralize the rust with a chemical item. They would then put a rust inhibitor, which is basically a primer on the bare metal. And then this roof would get 2 or 3 coats of a new coating that my hope would be you wouldn't have to touch it for 12, maybe 15 years, and then just general maintenance after that. So I think it probably has been the victim of a few not perfect repairs in the past. And from the days when you're absolutely correct, you would essentially take a 5-gallon bucket up on the roof and mop the roof with a silver paint. That is no longer the way to properly take care of one of these great antique roofs. So I think there's great hope to maintain this old roof, which is part of the character of your really cool old family house. And I would urge you to try to meet with a roofer. If Mr. Powell doesn't do that by chance, I am sure that one of the preservation organizations or even city staff could give you a couple of names of ideas of people to contact to have them come and take a look at your roof. And it may cost less to do a really good repair job on your roof than the full amount of having to actually demo and replace it with shingle.
Okay. Are they going to supply me with names?
I think they certainly could help do that. I mean, the board can't show favoritism, of course, to any business, but that doesn't mean I don't think that the city can't give some ideas of who to talk to. Is that fair, Kim?
Is that what?
We can give about 5 different names, 5 or 10 different names of people that we have seen do really good work.
And I will say also, just, if you own, be it a roof, be it old windows, be it, other old items on your house, and, if you just haven't had to deal with it before, a lot of people don't, if you look in the phone book or even talk to a contractor who you may know in person, not everybody knows the process to deal with each individual material. And that's something that we all have to understand. And I think it's fair to need to point people in the right direction, to service people.
Yeah, Glenn, I think that was all really well put. And Ms. Waters, the only thing I would add is that I used to live really close to this house, and I know it is alone in having its original metal roof, but I think that makes it wonderful. I mean, I always admired it. I love how you still have the wood siding and the original windows. I mean, I think it is a really wonderful little house. And so I hope you, can appreciate that people who really study these things admire the little house that you preserved this long and just want it to keep staying as wonderful as it is. So I'm hopeful that with the connections city staff can help you make, that you can get this taken care of and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, we don't want you to have problems with the plaster and have to rip that out and do sheetrock either. So I will email you the 2 people that I've worked with personally and just make sure that those people are probably on your list, but I'll email those to you just so that you, if they're not on your list, you could add those to the recommendation.
Great, thank you, Glenn.
Sure.
All right, so just as a matter of course, I will make a motion for denial of the replacement of this roof with architectural shingles, and then just assume that Mrs. Waters can speak with staff or other advisors and find a good way forward to save this one.
All right, one more question. So, following what Mr. Gardner said and recommendations for people to fix it, repair it, do I have to go back through this process to get a repair?
No.
Okay.
If you're repairing the material you have, all your builder or your roofer would need would be a very general permit for repair in kind. You don't have to wait for a hearing for that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I look forward to getting names of people that can go up there and do that. Maybe, it might be a little cheaper. I don't know.
Thank you, Ms. Waters.
But
As a matter of course, right now, we've got to vote on the motion, and then we can finish up. So at this time, we have a motion on the floor for denial of replacement of the turn metal roof with, do I have a second?
Second, along with the pledge to email staff recommendations.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Julia,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
In favor?
and the chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Waters.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, agenda item number 2, 52 Cooper Street.
Thank you, Lindsay. 52 Cooper Street is requesting final approval for demolition of the existing foundation to elevate the structure for FEMA requirements and for modifications to the current roof form. The building's a category 3 in the East Side neighborhood, was constructed in 1892 and is in the historic materials demo group. And here's an aerial just for some context. It's on Cooper at the intersection of America Street. And here's some existing site photos. From the intersection, looking toward the church. Further, this is the west elevation and south. And this is Cooper Street looking east and west and north on America. Here's a Sanborn map from 1902, from 1944 and 1955. You see between 1944 and 55, it squared off its corners. And I don't know if anyone knows the history on it, but the history of this church is really, really great. Emma Abbott was an opera singer, and she donated $5,000 to this church for it to be built. So if you haven't looked it up, it's on Wikipedia. So find all the history there. With that being said, I'll turn it over to the applicant for the presentation.
Thanks, Kim. This is Ryan Heiler, owner and developer of this project. I live at 73 Cooper Street, which is one block up from the church, and have walked by there daily since I moved into the neighborhood, and have really admired the historic architecture of the building, and honestly have been a little bit upset by the disrepair of the property, and so decided to step in and try to do something about it. Every time I walk by, I feel like there's another piece of wood that's fallen off, and there's tarps over the roof line where there's major water penetration issues. So we bought the property probably 90 days ago and have been working on a plan for adaptive reuse. And I've met with a number of the neighbors up and down Cooper Street, and I've attempted to meet with the neighborhood association, and unfortunately, after multiple voicemails, have not been able to get a call back from them. But I was able to reach 2 of the board members who I believe are supportive of the project. And Kim, I think that several of the neighbors have sent emails into BAR showing support. So just want to thank you guys for your consideration, and I'll ask Luke with the design firm to present from here.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. My name is Luke Jarrett. I'm architect with Synchronicity. As Ryan mentioned, we've been working hard to come up with a way to keep this building operating in Charleston. It's a fantastic structure. And there's some really, really neat elements to the building. But as Ryan also mentioned, it's in a state of pretty bad disrepair. So we're really looking forward to doing this rehabilitation. We're here tonight to ask for a few items, and I'm going to list them, give you a very brief summary of kind of what we've gotten to so far and how we've arrived at it, and then go through the items. And then, of course, I'd love to have as much feedback as I'm able to get. So we're looking to elevate the structure above base flood plus the freeboard requirements. We are asking to make modifications to the current roof form of this building in a few areas. And then a third item, which has gotten a little bit more important as we've learned more, it has to do with the fence that's around the site, and I'll cover that item last. As Kim mentioned, the building shows up on the Sanborns in 1902. Didn't look like it had been modified much in 44, somewhere between there and 55. If we could skip to that 55 Sanborn map, please. You can see, actually, I'm sorry, can we go back one more just really quickly? I want to throw something out. So the original building had a transept form with a large gable at either side. And the north and south sides also have a little swoop to the gable to the Cooper River side. And it had these neat little chamfered corners as well that show up in the roof form. So the original roof on this building was a transept, like I said, with these neat little gables. And then there is a two-story, the same two-story element there you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. So in 1955, or by the 1955, if we could skip ahead, modifications to structure have been made where they have squared off 3 of the 4 corners. Then at some point between the 55 and the earliest photo we have right now is 90s, that top right corner was also squared off. As each of these corners were squared, roofs were put on those additions. Again, we're not really able to tell if the roof forms that are there today are the original roof forms, if they've been modified over time. But as we'll see when we get to that part of the presentation, that plays a big part in kind of what we're looking for. The parcel is residential zoning in a DR2F district. It's currently a church, which is a suitable use for this zoning. Going forward, it will not be a church anymore. Unfortunately, the church is going to have to leave for their own reasons. So it really falls to us to try to find a use for this structure so that we can continue to keep it viable and keep it up to date and in good condition. Residential use is what's going to happen to this building. And looking at the building, and you can just tell from the footprints around it, it's far too large to be a single family residence. It's going to need to be used for multi-families. So, you know, going forward, realistically, that's the only use that's going to be, you know, likely at all for this structure. Initially, when we were looking at the project, we were investigating the opportunity to keep the building at its current height. It does flood on this side of town, and you know, generally we are okay with elevating structures when they are in harm's way, but we always like to just take a look at first to make sure that there's not another option. The building is currently not eligible for a historic structures variance, and the only way to make it eligible would be to get it individually listed on the register. And after working with SHPO, they've informed us that the use change and the modifications to the interior of the structure would not fly with that process. So unfortunately, our only option really is to elevate the structure. As we're going to be making a use change to the building, it will have to be brought up to modern codes. So we're effectively precluded in doing anything else to the structure other than make this elevation. And then the use going forward also is basically driving the other modifications we're asking to make. And then with one caveat, which has to do with kind of trying to get the building to a condition to where it can last for, you know, another 100, 150 years. I guess I've already kind of jumped into the elevation portion. We're asking to demolish the existing foundation, lift the structure up. The finished floor right now is about 310 off the ground. I think we need to get to about 8'8". We're looking at coming up about 5 feet, and we are not planning to elevate it higher than we need to satisfy code. We are going to be proposing, some of the things I'm talking about in the presentation may not be strictly under the purview of the board, but we feel that it's really important to give as much information as possible so the public has this full information so they can be involved in the process. We'd like to use a concrete masonry foundation faced with stucco, and we are planning to mitigate the changes from the street with landscaping, and then also the fence that we're going to talk about a little later on. So that's the first portion. The second portion, I think if we could skip forward into the presentation, please, where we have the existing roof drawing where it shows some orange designations. Excellent, thank you. So this is the roof that we have today. You can see the transept form. You can see the hipped portions on the left side of the structure. And then we've outlined the original footprint with a dashed orange line. The areas that we have shaded in orange are areas of this building that are having really significant problems as a result of the forms of these roofs. 3 of them are a function of these later additions, and the 4th has to do with the way that the tower element is operating. So what we've got now is a roof that is not performing. It is made up on the bottom left-hand corner, there's a gable facing left. On the top left-hand corner, there's a gable facing north with a little bit of a shed. On the top right, it's a sort of a shed sloping to the right. And then on the bottom, I believe, is another gable roof that intersects with the tower element. I think then it would be helpful if we could skip to one of the renderings that shows kind of an axon to where we can see the existing roof. And I can really kind of describe.
Just to let you know.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
You have about 2 minutes left.
Oh gosh, I'll speed up. I apologize. Okay, so effectively we've got, thank you, this is great. And if we could just kind of roll through this while I'm talking, you can see these little corner roof additions that have been put in. They've created a number of really unusual valleys that have just made drainage bad. There's not really any recommended roof system that I would ever use that would have a gable intersecting another gable like this. And the shed roofs are a very low slope for their materials. And as you can see, again, these are all later additions to the building. So what we are asking to do is to really simplify, this is excellent if we could pause here, to really simplify the way that this roof is working. We would like to keep the footprint of the building as it stands today. But we would like to go back into the 4 corners that they have added later on and remove the oddly shaped kind of weird roofs and come back with a low slope membrane roof that we know we can get a really good tight seal on, and that we can kind of protect the structure and that we know will perform well, won't be visible. So that needs to happen to this roof under really any circumstances, in my opinion. The way that it's constructed now, even if it's reclad, will not mitigate the problems that invariably come from these kind of very unusual roof conditions. The second area that's a problem is, you can see in this elevation just north of the tower, we're also proposing a cricket system to where we can pick some water up and move it away from that intersection point with the tower. So those are modifications, again, that we feel must be made to protect the integrity of this building and stop it from being damaged any further. Additional modifications are a result of scope. You can see here there are some dormer elements that would like to add, which would require us to open up some of this roof form Those are to allow us to use this as a multifamily residential. It's required by code that we have egress from sleeping rooms, and we have placed very small dormers set back from the edges of the roof to be clad on all sides in the same material as the roof replacement, which we would like to use an appropriate standing seam, so that we can facilitate the program in a way that is very, very minimally, it's not minimally visibly impactful. You can see from the elevation renderings that these things will largely kind of go away. I'll move forward to the next item because I know I'm out of time. But the last item is there's a brick fence around the site. We have a sheet in our set with elevations that demonstrates this. There's a low brick fence with wrought iron work on the top, and then there's an arched element in front of the main entrance that's also brick. The brick is painted. The brick is a contemporary brick. It's not a hand-struck brick. And unfortunately, because we have to lift this building, the equipment that we will be needing to place on the site will require the removal of this wall. We're currently proposing to remove the wall and retain the elements and then reconstruct the wall as it was previously placed, with one exception being we need to modify it slightly. If you can see plan upper left where there's an arrow, that's the drive of the building that's coming out. We would need to shorten the fence in that area. And then finally, there is an arched element that's in front of the main entrance with some words and things on it. It's very unusual because I believe it's just about a little taller than 6 feet high in the middle. So really, it's too low to even walk under, that you can see in the bottom right. But the mass and the shape is iconic, and it's really cool. And what we're proposing to do is to pick that up to a height where we can have it satisfy egress from the site, and also maybe complement, or mitigate a little bit of the elevation of the structure. And then I guess the final thing we can see, if you see in the picture in the upper left-hand corner, there's an exterior modern brick furnished chimney that was added to the back of this building. We'd also like to not put that back when we elevate the structure. We have worked with Preservation and Society and Historic Charleston Foundation with the design, and I understand that they're going to have some feedback. We welcome that. Again, the purview items that we're asking for: the demolition of the foundation, modifications to the existing roof form, and change to that site fencing. But we would love to hear any other comments and feedback to help us come forward with a really great design. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. I'll open it up for board questions at this time. Kim, I have a question for you. It is the demolition of the brick, the fencing, is that before the board today as well?
That it wasn't specified on the drawings. Luke and I have talked about it, but so no, it's not before the board today, technically.
Okay. Any other board questions at this time? All right. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We do. First, we have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request to demolish the existing foundation to elevate the structure and to modify the existing roof form at 52 Cooper Street. We thank the applicant for their time walking through the project with us. We have no objection to the foundation work and understand the need to elevate this historic church structure. We also have no objection to the changes to the roof, which were modified in the mid-1900s and has created a significant water infiltration problem for the overall building. We do have a few recommendations to improve the project that we'd like to see on the record. One, the tower had a circular window on the side elevation that is not shown in the drawings. This window should be reestablished. The dormers are rectangular in shape. We would support removal of additional roofing material to add gables to the dormers to complement the design of the church. The windows appear to have been 2/2 in the 1990 photo. We recommend reestablishing the 2/2 pattern for the replacement windows. We also believe the circular windows would benefit from having some divided lights rather than a single pane of glass. The gate and fence will need to be temporarily removed to accommodate the house lifting equipment. These materials should be salvaged and reused in the reconstructed fence and gate. Because the structure is being elevated, we believe it would be appropriate to increase the height of these elements. There may also be a way to use this reconstructed wall to provide flood mitigation at the site. We respectfully recommend approval of this application. Thank you.
Next, we have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We also greatly appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this project. And overall, we are glad to see a positive adaptive use for this building that will support its long-term preservation. And we do not have objections to the demolition and elevation requests. However, as the elevation design is studied, we would encourage introducing a better transition detail between the new stucco foundation and siding material on the main body of the building. We are also largely comfortable with the proposal to restore the building's cruciform roof profile, but would encourage study of dormers that would be more compatible with the historic roof, perhaps with a sloping shed or gable form, in keeping with Historic Charleston Foundation's recommendations. Also, the perspective showing the north elevation on page 32 of the submittal depicts a single remaining modified slope that's on the left side of the gable. And we feel this should be addressed to restore the original gable profile in keeping with the comprehensive restoration of the roof form. Finally, we feel more information is needed on how the new flat roofs will handle drainage and if this may potentially require further material removal to allow water to drain. Thank you.
Okay, speaking next is Rusty Scott.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. My name is Rusty Scott. I'm a resident of the East Side. Been here quite 5 years now. I actually work at the cigar factory, and my background is in engineering construction. I walk by this building daily on my lunch break, and I'm really glad that someone is finally taking the time and effort to save this building. It seems like it's been in disarray for a while. I'm really glad it's a kind of a unique way to handle it, turning into residential. I think that's a great use of space. I think it's beautiful and unique. And I think that from what it looks like, yeah, it looks like they're going to have some slopage drainage problems, and looks like they're addressing all that, which is great to see them trying to save that building, as well as raising it to keep it out of flood, which I think we all know is a fun ordeal. It's great that they're keeping the character of this building together, and I think that we should approve this building as they submitted it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, speaking last is Casey Harwell.
Good evening, Casey Harwell, live at 60 Amherst in the East Side. I can obviously attest to the drainage or the flooding issues that we have in the neighborhood. So obviously raising it seems like a great idea. But overall, just happy that they're keeping the aesthetic to historic, ideals. Walking by it often, I'm glad somebody's doing something with it. I think it looks like it's going to be an improvement. And so I also would love to see it come to fruition. Thank you.
Frankie, is that all we have for public comment?
That's everyone that signed up.
Thank you, Frankie. Kim, if you'll give the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
I'm sorry, it's not my turn.
Thanks, Lindsay. We applaud the applicant and property owner for taking on this project. It's an important building with an incredible history, and we're all very glad to see the proposed adaptive reuse. Therefore, we're comfortable with the addition of dormers into the historic roof at the locations proposed. The applicant has retained the historic core of the building and removed only the insensitive additions in the corners. Many of the valleys created by these additions are detrimental to the buildings, and so we are also comfortable with roof changes here and the redesign of the additions. The corner details aren't quite clear because of the sketch nature of the drawings presented, but corners and corner boards of the historic core should remain visible and not obscured by the niche additions. Further drawings should be presented and reviewed by staff to confirm conditions. The staff's therefore recommending final approval for Fema elevation, dormer windows, and conceptual approval on the other roof alterations pending board drawings with final review staff. I
Thank
just wanted to
you.
also get on record that I agree very much with Historic Charleston and Preservation Society's comments.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Jarrett, it is now your turn. You have 5 minutes. You can respond or clarify anything raised during public comment or in the city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you very much. I just have one item. If we could go back to the second to last preservation comment, I had a little trouble hearing you and I wanted to make sure that I got that one, if you don't mind.
Anna Catherine, if you want to repeat your second to last comment.
I think it was about the gable.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Let me see. I think, was it in reference to page 32?
Mhm.
Okay. We were just pointing out that on page 32, there appears to be this kind of single remaining modified slope on the left side of that gable on the north elevation.
Mhm.
And we were just suggesting that that be restudied or rather removed to fully restore the original gable profile. It's kind of reading like a parapet and just a strange kind of single vestige of later modifications when the rest of the work is so comprehensive to restore this roof form.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that would be one that I just would want to briefly touch on. We, based on what we could tell in looking at the Sanborn maps and also the fact that it's got that really incredible cladding spanning that entire gable, I think that little form might have been something that was older, but we will absolutely look farther into that and make sure that we're very clear with when we're making our final submittal for staff to enumerate that. But thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Mr. Jarrett, if you have nothing else, then I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I can start on this one. And it's a little unusual in that I think what we're technically ruling on is very limited portion of what we've been looking at and talking about. And in terms of the demolition purview, I'll just go ahead and say I have no problem with the elevation, the new foundation. I think that's necessary for this property and totally appropriate. I noticed flood ventilation isn't shown yet, but I'm sure the applicant will be thoughtful about how that is incorporated. And I think this is a pretty clever proposal to adaptively reuse this noteworthy structure. And I appreciate the applicant's request for feedback on other issues. So on that note, I just have a couple of things that I would throw out there for consideration. I do agree with Historic Charleston Foundation about maybe harkening back to that earlier photograph that had the 2/2 configuration of the windows. Oh, I think maybe that was original. It seems in keeping with just the sort of modest nature of this structure. So I think that would be really nice to see instead of the large sort of plate glass that's indicated now. And just little things like the tripartite gable vent is shown in the proposed as being one big gable vent. That sort of thing could be carefully attended to. And the other comments from Historic Charleston and Preservation Society I think are worth considering, and I'm sure you listened carefully to them. But generally, I think it's a really promising project, and I'm not opposed to what's being requested regarding demolition. And I'm also, just for the record, I think I'm okay with the form of the dormers in that they are clearly a new element. I think I'm okay with that, but I'm curious what other board members have to say.
I don't have much to add, and I'll comment. I'm in agreement with you, Julia, on, I think I have no problem with the demolition and raising. I do want to clarify, and I'd asked about this earlier, with regards to the fence. So all of it will be, I guess, removed for purposes of construction and then built back. And Mr. Jarrett, this is a question for you. Can you go back? Will any portion of it not be replaced, so it will be entirely demolished?
If we could go to the sheet in the set where we have, I believe I've got streetscape elevation sheet between the renderings, and there, we're on it. Go back. Sorry, forwards. One more. Oh, keep going. Sorry. There we go. So this is where the fence is today. If you look to the left of the structure, there's a portion of this fence that's going to need to be modified for us to be able to do our site circulation. So we would be asking that it wouldn't go back in those locations where we need to get in and out of the site.
Yeah. So Luke, this is Ryan Heiler, if I could chime in. So basically, from the column break to the right there on the corner of the church, everything to the left there will likely be used to circulation, and so the areas around the church we will rebuild, but would ask that everything to the left of that remain, I guess, for grabs, if you will, as we figure out what we're doing on the rest of that site.
Okay, well, thank you. Then I'll add to the comments. I think we could add that to the motion. And I would encourage, I would be okay with that demolition as well. And I would encourage the applicants to reuse those materials in some sort of thoughtful way if they're salvageable. But that's really all I have.
Lindsay, are we understanding that they do want to take it all down, or just that portion that was mentioned
Just
on the
they're
west?
going to take all of it. Well, maybe not all of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they'll have to remove portions of it for purposes of construction, but they will rebuild it.
Yeah. So Lindsay, if I could, my understanding from talking to the lifting subcontractor is that they will need to remove the entire thing.
But you'll build back a portion.
That's
of it.
correct. Yes, that is correct.
Everything except for that portion that Mr. Heiler just discussed. So where the church ends all the way to the west will be permanently removed.
Correct.
And, given our purview, I guess we're asking ourselves if we're okay with them demolishing it, because I do trust them that they want to put most of it back, but you know what I'm saying? Our purview is demo, yes or no?
That's a very good.
Yeah, but I think, Julia, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think there can be a distinction between temporary construction demo and a permanent removal.
Yeah,
because
and I'm sure
not,
staff can work that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would not support a permanent full removal because I think the scale of that fence and the brickwork will be even more important, after the building is lifted to maintain a human scale. Lindsay, do you want my comments now, or are you still commenting?
Well, just one final thing is to clarify, and I think Julia raised a good point. So the only demolition that would be before us today is the permanent demolition of that portion that ends at the church and goes west. And that's all I have to say was that clarification. So Glenn,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So that being clarified, I think I'll further just sort of say, we're talking about a permanent demolition of that west end with a potential board request to salvage and reuse somewhere. Is that sort of what you were?
That would be my request, acknowledging that you don't necessarily have to order
This
that.
is Ryan Heiler again. Could I clarify one thing?
Yes.
Everything you're saying is correct. On the America Street frontage that you see to the right there, we will have to put a driveway in for egress on America Street as well. And so there will be a portion there. And I think so that where you see the column to the far right, I believe that there will be a section from that column inward to the site that we will be able to rebuild. But then there will be a 10, 12 foot driveway at some point in there as well that we'll need to leave open for egress.
Lindsay and Glenn, what if we considered, since the wall is not even really technically being requested, what if we just sort of defer the wall to staff for their review? And
I think we could defer it to staff for further review with the acknowledgement of sort of board comments,
cool.
knowing that I don't think any of us wants to see it permanently gone. So I am aligned with what has already essentially been said, with acknowledgement of both of the preservation groups. I think everybody's pretty right on target. I think the only, I initially did think that the dormer form was a little odd, but at the same time, I am not opposed to the dormers being differentiated from historic materials. So I encourage that to be studied carefully and thought through. And then my biggest comment really is just that as I think we have probably all watched, I mean, I feel like over the course of the past 5 or 8 years, I have seen this building continue to just sort of slough off and sag. And I fear that, one day it just keeps sloughing off and sagging. So I understand and acknowledge the need to have a new foundation, and at the same time, obviously having to raise it. But I hope we can challenge Luke and his team to really think through that foundation design and hope that the detailing of that helps ground the building. I mean, this is conceptual, so it's just shown as a white blank foundation, but I think there's an opportunity there to really give this building a good base and not even necessarily draw attention to the fact that it was raised several feet in 2022 or whenever it may happen. So that would be my biggest comment, is to very carefully detail the foundation. I think it's a good opportunity to show that that can be done well and have the building not necessarily feel out of place.
Okay. You mentioned this was conceptual approval, but I think.
Oh, am I wrong? Sorry.
Approval, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if that changes your comments at all.
Gotcha. I just think Luke needs to know that we're all driving by watching, and this is an opportunity.
Every day.
Yeah, not an opportunity to have a bad foundation under this building, Luke.
Yeah. I agree, Glenn. And again, it's a little bit of an odd situation because a lot of what we're advocating and suggesting is not really technically our right to do, but I appreciate that the applicant's, willing to listen.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that it's not a nothing building. And,
yeah. And I was gonna say just 2 more tiny things to think about, Luke, as you go. I feel like the foundation and the whole geometry of the building might be really well served if those corner infills could be recessed just ever so slightly to define the original gable end walls. And also I'll cross my fingers that you're able to do hand crimped ridges, because I think that would be super handsome on this building as opposed to a ridge cap. But with that said, I'm going to make a motion for final approval of demolition of existing foundation to elevate structure to FEMA requirements, and the proposed modifications to the current roof form. And I will add deferral of the partial demolition issues regarding the wall for staff review. And then I'm just going to say, and board comments, just to acknowledge that we had a good conversation about this, but I don't think we really need to itemize everything because it's mostly out of our purview anyway.
Okay, so I've got a motion on the floor for final approval for the demolition of the existing foundation for to meet FEMA elevation requirements. And then did you say conceptual approval of the roof alterations? Can you repeat what you?
No, and modification of current roof form as
final approval.
Yes, all final.
Okay. So to continue the motion, modification of the current roof form. Deferral of the partial demolition for staff review, and then a general acknowledgement of the board comments.
Yeah, and you might want to say deferral of the partial wall and fence demolition.
Okay, yes, and that's for staff review.
Correct.
Kim, did you get all that? I apologize for being disjointed.
I think I did. Thank you.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have a second for Julia's motion?
Second.
Now I will put it to a vote. Julia,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Heiler and Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you very much for y'all taking the time. Those comments are very helpful. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
All right, agenda item number 3, 42 Halsey Street.
All right, 42 Halsey Street is requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of a single family residence with an additional half story. It's in Charleston Village and in the Old Historic District. And here's an aerial. It's just below Montague, north of Wentworth Street. And here's existing site photos of the empty lot. This is from Lockwood, looking to the site. This is looking south on Halsey. You can see the site right here. And looking north on Halsey. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant for her presentation. Ashley, you have the floor.
Ms. Jennings, I see that you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Ms. Jennings? I see 2 Ms. Jennings in the meeting now. Both are unmuted. Ms. Jennings. I'm not certain if she's having technical difficulties, Kim, but we could go to the last item on the agenda and come back to this one.
I think that would be fine if we can't get her on.
It looks like
As long as the other are the next applicants online.
Kim,
She is.
Okay. All right, well, let's table agenda item number 3 for the moment. We'll go back to it. And we are on agenda item number 4, 182 Trad Street.
Ashley, maybe you can call in from the number on the agenda. Okay, number 4 is 182 Trad Street, requesting conceptual approval for hardscaping improvements, including new rear fence and wall, gates, bluestone paving, trellis, and fence at front, all modifications to the rear building, including new brick stair, rear door with side lights, and modification of window openings. The building is a category 4 in the Charlestown neighborhood, was built in 1920 in the Old and Historic District. Here's an aerial for context. It's at the corner of Ashley and Trad. And here's some existing site photos. There's the house here. And Sanborn maps from 1944, 1951. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Elizabeth, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Kim. Elizabeth Pope here for my applicants, the Mainers at 182 Trad Street. This is a neat property on the corner of Ashley and Trad. When I got the project, we did a lot of walking around the neighborhood to find kind of some precedent in what we should do with it. But being on that corner, the house was actually built, or the land was acquired in 1912 after the 1911 infill project. So across the street from this property is across Trad Street, it is the condos that were in really bad shape and then were torn down, and they're going to be rebuilt. They're in that picture there in the far left corner. That's empty right now because they just tore them down. And across Ashley Avenue are townhouses that are built on the street, and there's no yard. And so the height on the street is different than everything around it because it is high. And then down the street, it's 172 Trad. That used to be on the harbor, and it has tall walls around it. The people that built the house, he was a city engineer, and so I think that is one of the reasons why it is so high. The front porch is 6 feet 7 inches above the sidewalk. So we've got some height to consider when I began the project. So if we go to the next page, the survey, you can see that the plan had some garden work on it, but it is in a lot of disrepair. The front steps and walkway have been redone, I'm going to say recently. I don't know how recently, but it is in bathroom tile. And in the back is brickwork and a fountain, but it is not in great shape. And between the existing garden building and house, the utilities are actually kind of at grade right now because of it was not kept in great shape. So the next page shows the proposed plan. And with this plan, we're trying to preserve the character of the neighborhood, but also make it a family-friendly residence for my clients who have 2 young children, have called Charleston home for 10 years and plan to keep it their home for, the rest of their lives. So when I'm taking into consideration what my clients need and the surrounding properties, there's some things to take into consideration. One of them is enclosing the property for the small children and dogs. And it's an unusual lot because it has the kind of second lot with it, that is the garden. And the pool has been moved up to the front of the property because we are protecting the magnolia tree that is there, that provides really good scale between the 2 houses. In doing so, we need a privacy wall for that. And so to separate the spaces, I've shown a masonry wall on 3 sides of the pool. And around the front, it would be a existing coping wall with an iron fence. And we have proposed to redo the front walkway to replace the bathroom tile, add the pool. And also what that masonry wall lets us do is the front elevation is about a foot and 4 inches above where that pool is now. So having a masonry wall lets us bring up that elevation and not have a flooding problem. And when you leave the pool, you step down 2 steps, and that's a low retaining wall to get to the garden space. We are asking to help beautify that existing secondary building, which is on the Sanborn map, by putting a trellis off of it to also have a covered outdoor space. The big request is in the rear, which is adding a door off the back of the house, which I'll show you in the proposed pictures. Right now, the only access out of the house is through the main door and out of the back, which you actually go down 3 steps, squeeze by a powder room to get out of the house. It is not an easy, it doesn't go with the historic nature of the building. I'll show you what it looks like in my existing photos, so we can go to the next. This is the property on the Sanborn map, and these are pictures I pulled from Historic Charleston Foundation. It does show at one time that the right-hand side of the porch was enclosed with screening, but that is just some images I was able to pull. The next slide, please. This is showing existing site pictures, and we show it from Gibbs Street across Trad. It's where Gibbs and Trad intersects. We see from Ashley that we have kind of a wall of pittosporum we're trying to preserve to keep that privacy. And across Ashley is where the townhouses are that, are built on the property line at the sidewalk that go up 2.5 stories. So there is height there. The third picture to the right in the middle is the existing accessory building with the utilities kind of popping up out of the ground. And the other pictures, the bottom right one is the existing grade, how we fall down to the side yard. Next picture. These are some details of the property, the existing front steps, the existing brickwork, the bad steps on the back that are concrete with the brick wall that really just, they don't make the garden useful. It makes it very hard to get out and use this space. And the view kind of the back of the neighbor's garage, which we are planning to hide with some landscaping. And they're really trying to preserve the building and also make it function and work for them. Next slide. This is just the layout plan going through details of how to build and what we're proposing, including the back. I'll show you an elevation of the back terrace that would help us come off the back if we were able to add that back door. So let's look at that next. So this is the existing elevation of the back on the left and our proposed elevation on the right. That existing stair or door on the back is the one that is down a staircase inside the house that's squeezed between a powder room. And what we're proposing is, if you can see, we're matching the 3 windows on the right side of the house by adding the door and transom on the left. And that makes, I think, adds symmetry and does not take away from the significance of the building itself. And the terrace, we are asking to come out, and then you would walk under it from the brick walkway that comes from the Ashley Avenue access side. And the portion that is of the brick wall that is raised would be pierced brick to help some airflow and not make it look so hard. Next. This would be the
minutes left.
Okay, this is the side view that you would be looking towards Ashley Avenue from, and it would be the same view if you were on Ashley looking east. Next. This is the front elevation we're proposing with the masonry wall on the right side. The columns are proposed to be 7 feet, and the top of the wall would be 6'3", and that puts us at the house height is 6'6" from the sidewalk. So I don't think that is too large. And then using the existing coping in the front and adding the fence on top of that. Next. This is the proposed trellis to help add to the secondary building to make it, to improve how it looks and to make it function. You can go next, Kim. These are some details of like the low retaining wall would be 18 inches. That would come down from the pool down into the rear yard. Next. And this is details of the gate work for the front, the side, and the side. Is that the last slide? And that's another, it's an image.
Elizabeth, the owner emailed this photo to me, so I assumed it was
okay.
In your set.
Great. And also, so the masonry wall, I know there's some feedback on that, but 172 Trad has a tall masonry wall. There is 62 Murray Boulevard does the same thing with their side yard as their pool yard, and it has a tall wall there, and then it goes to a low coping wall in the front. Using the rear terrace, having some precedence, 64 South Battery, which I know is a much larger house, but it has a terrace on the back of it coming off. So we did consider things, and they've come before you before and have asked for a rear porch that was denied, and some other items of railing for the front because it is 6'6", it's tall, and they have children. And so we really have tried to come up with a set that doesn't take away from the house, but adds to it. So I hope, that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Ms. Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Tiny question about that new door you're proposing at the back.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell from your drawing, but are you thinking to trim that out as one big unit, like no siding in between, just all trim?
No. I think we would do a door, and we take your suggestions on what the door could look like, but then do a transom over the top, just to kind of keep with having 3 windows on the right side of the house to try to have it match the left side of the house.
Okay, but there wouldn't be little pieces of siding in between the window and door, would there? I think there's enough room for that.
I think there is enough room.
Okay.
But I'm open to that,
Cool.
I'm trying to think back. I know we obviously have seen a different proposal for the house before. Can you remind me why is that door? What happened? Was there an alteration at some point? What led that door to be an awkward or kind of out of character height?
The one that's down the steps?
Correct.
I don't know.
A halfway kind of odd thing.
It's real strange. We're not sure who did it or who renovated it, but the door is odd.
Thank you.
Any other board questions at this time? Okay, Frankie, if you'll open it up for public comment.
Okay, first we have Phyllis Ewing.
This is Phyllis Ewing. I live at 4 Ashley Avenue. I sent you my comments, but I wanted to go over a couple of them. I live directly to the north. I think they're doing some really nice stuff over there, and I'm especially happy to see them get the front walkway and steps fixed and get rid of the bathroom tiles. I didn't know they were bathroom tiles, but I knew they didn't work. And I think they're painting the foundation green has really made a huge difference in that house and unified certain elements. Having said that, of course, there's a caveat. One thing which I noticed is there's no eastern elevation. There's no true elevation of this property or western from Ashley Avenue. And so one does not get necessarily the scale of this proposed terrace. They're inconsistent representations of it with this rendering that we're looking at now. It looks like a little bump out. And then on the architectural drawing, it goes out, I think, close to 14 feet, little short of 14 feet, and it's 16 feet wide. It's over a 200 square foot space extending out over that proposed walkway. It starts at 7 feet. The floor is 7 feet, 2 inches above ground level. And if you can go to the drawing, well, you don't have to, showing the detail of the terrace and the garage over to the right. That's my garage. And you'll see that you'll see that, okay, one more, I think. You'll see that that thing is, the floor is at just about the height of my garage thing, and somebody standing on that can look right over into the private living quarters in my house. It's intrusive. It's not North Side manners. It's highly visible from Ashley Avenue. I know they say it's not, but it is highly visible. I sent pictures last time. Last time the deck looked like it had a chimney coming up the back, and it was wood supported and it didn't unify. This is a better looking rendition, but it's very heavy on this White House. You know, I hope it's not approved, but if it is, I would suggest that instead of having pierced brick, they have just a regular banister that would blend into the house, you know, wooden banister. I'd like to know what the undefined beige area is on the play lawn. It looks like it's a roof structure, but it's not labeled. I don't know what it is. I don't know how tall it is. Is it a sandbox? Is it a folly? I would ask that not be approved till we can find out what it is. The curved wall on coming into the terrace is very heavy, and the stair rails you would think should have some sort of balance. I'm not against putting the door there if they want to. I'm against this big terrace coming in. Then just a couple general comments. The fencing is sort of, I don't know, it doesn't unify the property. It starts out stucco in the front and then it goes to the metal, and that break makes sense. And then it comes up Ashley Avenue, which we don't have an elevation of. And then it goes to a stucco wall again. Then it has an opening. Then it has a stucco wall. Then another opening, parking spaces, and then a receding metal wall. I don't know what it does. And I'm not sure. I think the gates that are shown are interior when it says golf cart gates or whatever that's labeled. Another thing that I'm not wild about is on page 111. They reference raising of the grade elevation. This is the highest point practically on the block, and to raise it more is going to shed more water going over a place that already has flood issues. And then just for humor, if you go back to the page with the Sanborn map, here, right back, you'll notice at the bottom left, where the photo that says home of Mr. and Mrs. John Ferguson Girardeau, at the bottom it says recommended by Duncan Hines. Who knew? Thank you for listening, and thank you all for serving on this board. It's tough and it's a great dedication of time, and I thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Ms. Ewing. Frankie, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We are generally comfortable with the proposed modifications to the rear of the exterior of the house, but we have a few concerns with the site plan and hardscaping. Most notably, the proposal to add a pool at the front of the property is inappropriate and should be set back to be inconspicuous from the street. This would also eliminate the need for a large stucco wall at the front of the property, which is also atypical within its context. A continuous low coping wall with an iron fence would be a more appropriate treatment for the Trad Street elevation. And hearing the comments of the neighbors speaking to the visibility of the terrace, we would encourage further study of that element as well to mitigate any negative impacts on surrounding properties. Thank you.
Anna Catherine. Frankie, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
That is all we have signed up.
Thank you, Frankie. Kim, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Kim, sorry to interrupt. I believed the owner of the house had signed up to talk.
No, it's not the-
We do typically ask the owner to speak during the presentation portion, but Mr. Maynard, I'll allow you to speak at this time.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, and thank you for the board. I would echo Phyllis's comments. You guys do a great service of duty to our city, and I know it's a hard job, and really appreciate the time you've given us here today. I just echo some of Elizabeth's comments that we've been in Charleston for 10 years. In that time, we've restored 2 beautiful homes, and we've always done a really great job. And preserving the home in which we live in to its historical character is always of utmost importance to us. We do have 2 young children, Gordy and Daphne, 4 and 7 respectively. And, within that, we think that having, fencing around this, fairly large property in a very, very busy street that cars fly up Ashley frequently is super important. We did look, as Elizabeth said, at many of the precedents and feel that we were doing a great job with, the walls, the masonry walls, as well as the other iron gating. The back door of the property down the 3 steps is a real problem. We're concerned with safety there. We think that the property certainly does deserve another exit, and outside the kitchen is definitely a way to do that. We have certainly tried to take in our previous meetings with this board into consideration and have scaled our project back greatly because of that, and are really hoping for your leniency to move some sort of proposal forward. I will just close in saying that historic preservation is a passion of my wife and mine. We moved to Charleston because we love the historic nature of it and are really passionate about this great project. And of course, 182 Trad, and we'll obviously work our best to make sure that it is a great fabric for the community for hundreds of years. Thank you.
Frankie, is that all we have speaking from the public?
Okay, I believe that is all.
Thank you, Frankie. All right, Kim, now if you'll give your staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thanks, Lindsay. Staff are generally comfortable with the project, but we feel that the rear wall elements seem somewhat disorganized. Perhaps it's because we're missing that elevation in our set. We have some hesitation about bringing the pool wall directly to the street, and we would recommend relocating the pool so that the coping wall can continue around the property line. The alterations to the rear openings of the building are minimally impactful, and we would just want to see the trim detailing for the door and window moving forward. The terrace seems somewhat deep, and we would recommend reducing it to just large enough to comfortably create the passageway. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Pope or Mr. Maynard, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff?
One of the only reasons that I know the pool is not ideal located where it is But it's either getting rid of the magnolia tree, which then causes more drainage problems, which we're trying not to do. And there's no other place for it. We've got the trees in the back. And just for Phyllis, we are going to heavily plant that back wall, like against your existing fence, and do that. And so understanding that that masonry wall is, I know to y'all heavy, but knowing that 172 trad has one, and then keeping the front open is just really what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
Kim, do you want to go first? Or sorry, Julia, do you want to go first? Or do you want
Yeah, and I'm gonna lean on you pretty heavily because it's primarily landscape architecture proposal. But I think there are a lot of good things about this. This property is quirky and has a lot of odd conditions. And generally, I think what's being proposed are improvements to that. I do hear the concern about bringing the pool all the way to the street, and that sort of abrupt transition from open and iron to solid masonry is a little unusual. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say. I'd like to know what other people think before I make up my mind.
My comments are fairly brief because I think this house has been kind of sitting on the corner asking for someone to help it for a while. So, in part, I'm grateful that its prominent visibility will be enhanced, hopefully. But I think just to address, I'm kind of going through staff's comments. I fully understand the comments about the pool. I don't know the full history on the magnolia tree with regard to, it's not a grand tree, so it could come down, but I'm not also going to advocate to remove a happy, healthy tree. So I know I've sort of worked on a few of these extra wide lots where you kind of have a lot and a half, and in my mind, you sort of treat it as a house lot and a garden lot. And I think if the tree is not on the chopping block for any personal reason, then it does, to a degree, site planning wise, make sense to put the pool forward over there, even though it is a little out of, I guess I'm going to say out of character, or maybe just out of pattern with what happens in the neighborhood. But, I'll give credit to this being a corner lot and, an extra wide lot at that. So I could also see the possibility of, instead of kind of abruptly switching from iron to masonry, I would maybe like to see if they were to study giving up a little bit of length on the pool, and perhaps that masonry wall. I'll kind of interrupt my own thought and say that I think the polite thing to do if a pool is destined for that location is to have a solid wall and not necessarily share a family swimming pool with the sidewalk. I think swimming pool privacy is important. So, I mean, the pool I think is what, 27-ish feet long. I'm kind of straining to, or 28 maybe. I would consider, what if the pool were 2 or 3 feet shorter and that wall were able to pull back a tad from the sidewalk to give a little bit of, greenery to the sidewalk and not feel like it was a masonry wall right on the sidewalk. I think that would be something to study. From there, I guess my comment, if we were to zoom back out, would be to kind of go over to the Ashley side. And again, this is a bit of a unique situation because the house has so much frontage kind of to the public. Perhaps that perhaps the iron could continue to that walkway where the cursor is right now, and minimize the difference there. And I heard what Phyllis was saying about the north end where the iron fence picks back up, but it looks like that would primarily be kind of hidden within landscape. And the board doesn't really rule on planting, but Elizabeth might be able to answer whether, is that fence planned to be covered in something green so you don't actually really know that there's an iron fence there. I would love to think that the goal would be to I understand fencing and containing the property for pets and children, but maybe you don't necessarily know that the whole property is fenced by looking at it. So I think there might just be a little bit of a hardscape and vertical wall fence. Maybe that could get slightly either toned down or tweaked a bit. But generally I kind of understand where they're headed. I mean, there's a whole lot of family use, it appears here, and I don't think we want to discourage a family from using the house. And I think maybe there's just a little bit of rethought of the complexity of some of it. And then finally, I guess I don't know that I feel really confident in commenting a whole lot on that terrace in the back. I understand the neighboring feelings. It also I think I understand what that walkway and pathway are asking to do. It is a kind of a weird back of house that has been altered a lot. And I'm not opposed to figuring out a way to get a door and an access down to the property in a reasonable manner. I guess is that a fair thing to say, Julia? Maybe is there another architectural comment to that perhaps?
Yeah, no, I honestly didn't really have any issue with it as proposed. And I hear the neighbors' concern, but maybe Elizabeth, could you just tell us how deep that porch is from north to south?
I looked it up and now I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it is 14 feet deep and 16 feet wide. And one of the reasons to have some size to it is so you don't fall out the back door. And so you could maybe have a space to walk out, and you're so far above ground level there that it's, you're able, I think it could be a neat area where you walk under it and let people come out the back door and have a place to sit. And you've got the front porch, but you're on such a prominent lot.
Yeah.
That if you want some privacy and you want to be outside in your garden, you need a space to be able to use it.
And then I'm just noticing that it does meet the required 25-foot rear setback. So personally, I think I'm comfortable with the size of the porch. I assume that little element just to the north of that porch is the potential playhouse or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
even
a temporary
permanent structure. Okay.
Yeah. And one thing too, so about the fence, which I'm happy to look at, but we can't, it's just going back and forth between hiding trash cans and hiding golf cart parking. And then underneath that oak tree in the back, we cannot build, a wall under it to match.
I'll kind of add, I think I have a history of generally being opposed to adding raised decks and things on the back of houses that can infringe on neighbors' privacy. And so I think that should be thought through carefully. And I don't know if there's a tweak or an amendment of the size there that allows them a landing. Maybe that lawn with the playhouse could get a little smaller to give more buffering in the back. I think we just need to make sure that it is a polite treatment for neighbors. And I've kind of said that before on a few houses that were being elevated and having decks and porches added or proposed to the back of them, because that type of addition can, it can impact the, the habits and the enjoyment of neighboring properties. So I think that detailing should be carefully thought through. I don't disagree that I think what we have seen today might be missing a little bit of elevation and detail, but it doesn't look out of character for the house, with regard to the style of it. So I think maybe that should be an open discussion with the neighbors, with, getting a comfort level of how large is doable within reason versus tipping the scale and becoming intrusive. And I would support that kind of moving forward conceptually if the applicants are willing to kind of have a dialogue with the neighbors and come to a, hopefully a happy medium there.
As the applicant and owner, I'm certainly happy to do so. And I presume we're referring to neighbor, and that is that's Phyllis, correct? And certainly happy to do so. We have approached her to have a discussion, and she did voice her issues before, and we think we've taken them into account. But if sizing and square footage is the issue, we'd like to be reasonable. I think that's a deck that should be enjoyed, as Elizabeth pointed out. But we can find enjoyment at a range of sizes, I think.
To take into consideration that her
I'd like to
garage,
clarify, we're in board comment, we're in board discussion at the moment, public comment in the applicant period.
Oh. You guys could just tell me to be quiet then, sorry. My first time on.
I like to maintain politeness.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need to come up with some sort of motion. Glenn, do you have anything in mind motion-wise?
I am kind of looking back through the 4 comments from staff, because staff is recommending conceptual approval with detail with final review by staff, which I'm comfortable with that general recommendation. I'm just sort of looking through comment 1, staff refers to missing an elevation in their set. I'm sure that would be easy to handle. I've sort of said my piece about the pool. I think that a little bit of, perhaps a restudy could go to staff. I mean, well, restudy is the wrong word. My recommendation is to look at pulling that wall away from the sidewalk a little bit, to make that what I'm calling garden lot, or that half a lot, feel a little more green and recessed off the sidewalk, as opposed to having that masonry wall right on the sidewalk. I feel like that could be a good meeting point there, because I guess I'm going to go with the other thought of this. I mean, they have extra room on the front right that most people don't have. I don't really want the playhouse to end up there. If the pool were to move in the back, and we can't keep them from putting the playhouse in the front. So, I think that a nicely detailed garden wall, if it were recessed a little off the sidewalk with a bit of planting in front, would be better than having a play lawn and a soccer goal and a playhouse in the front yard. I'm just gonna, I guess, put it that way, truthfully. I mean,
Would you envision the iron wall then running in front of it along the front property line, or would you return the iron wall to that?
I would return the wall 2, 3, whatever feet to the north into the masonry wall. Yeah. I think that could be done well, and that way the iron fence would be, symmetrically returning at the same point that it does on the west side. I think that would, I personally think that could be detailed to a happy point.
Okay, and I'm just gonna reiterate that in my mind, what they're proposing at the back in terms of that terrace there, I don't consider that a deck. You know, a deck to me is like a derogatory sort of term. I think it's a terrace, and I think it fully meets the required zoning setback for this lot. And I just don't really personally see it as being an overreach. So I don't know how we'll land on that. But otherwise, Glenn, I think you're onto something. Why don't I just try a motion for conceptual approval with staff comment 1 and 3, and a board comment to recess the masonry wall on the south side to provide a planter at the sidewalk.
All right.
Final review by staff. Just trying that.
We have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 and 3, and a board comment to recess the masonry wall on the south side to provide a planter or plantings at the sidewalk, and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Could I ask a question while we're in the motion? And I'm sorry, but it may be a question to the applicant.
Yes.
I'm only thinking through, I mean, this isn't required, but I'm just wondering, Ms. Ewing mentioned about flooding and drainage and things. I'm just wondering, is there a plan to kind of tie into storm system to try to make sure that
Yes.
that there is no potential adverse effect?
There is, and we have talked about the drainage and are working on with who we're bidding it out to take drainage into consideration. And, you know, the lot is really high and then gets really, really low. I mean, there's a 2-foot difference right now from the front to where that accessory structure is, but it is also washed significantly that now the pipes are above ground that are meant to be underground.
So thank you for the answer. Julia, I'm just wondering if we can add, making sure that, you know, the terrace, pool area, things like that are properly, I mean, I'm just reading on the parking area is pervious base. I see that. I just want to make sure that, you know, there is no, there is no effect on either, I mean, really the north or the east neighbor from, you know, I mean, it is an intensification, albeit not a bad one, but it is an intensification of site.
Are you adding another board comment that they not affect any sort of drainage patterns to the north and the east?
That would be my request if she's interested in amending her motion.
Sure, you could add that as a board comment. And I'm sorry to jump backward again, but is there pool equipment indicated on this site plan that I just didn't see?
It is not indicated on this one, but I've drawn it. It'll be next to, we're trying to get it into the HVAC or under the existing accessory building because it is high.
Julia,
okay.
Did you want to, so as modified with the additional board comment, did you want to add any additional comments to your motion?
I guess you could just add one more to clarify location of pool equipment.
Okay, Kim, did you get that with the 3 board comments? The final one being to clarify the location of the pool equipment.
I have that one. I'm missing the one about the drainage. Can you repeat that?
That board comment was, I don't know if it's a restudy or just to confirm that the improvements to the site have no effect on the drainage to the property to the north and east. Is that right,
Thank you.
Glenn?
Yeah.
And this is Julia's motion. So do I have a second to Julia's motion?
Second.
I'll put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Pope and Mr. Manor.
Thank y'all.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, we are moving now to the third and now final item, 42 Halsey Street. Do we have Ashley on the phone? Ashley, if you want to make a noise, even though it's time for Kim to give the introduction, that would be helpful.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Wonderful. Okay, Kim, if you will give an introduction and then Ashley can give the presentation.
Okay, 42 Halsey Street's requesting conceptual approval for new construction of single-family residence with additional half-story. And here we are, going down the context slides. And you have the floor, Ms. Jennings, whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank y'all, and I appreciate your patience with my audio. I don't know what happened. I got kicked out. I'm Ashley Jennings. I'm the architect representing the owners, Lindsay Colbert and Jarrett Bogley. They've purchased this lot. It's a really unique lot, and the proposal is for new construction for a single-family residence. This lot is unique because it's in a part of the city that is surrounded by buildings that are approximately circa 1980. So we're not dealing with a historic context, but we're certainly dealing with a defined context here. It fronts on a public right-of-way, which is Halsey Boulevard, and has a really great view of the Ashley River, but it has access for parking from a private shared drive at the rear of the property. It's in a 3-story height district, yet all the context is 3.5 stories. So part of this application tonight is to ask for that additional half-story. Kim, can you move to the next slide, please? This is some of the context you can see here. Like I said, these buildings are more recent, and this is in a FEMA flood zone. Everything has to be elevated a full story above grade. So you see the way that the houses have started to address the ground and the sidewalk. Next slide, please. So here you can see our proposed site plan, and my clients would like to consider the front of the house, the portion of the house that fronts on Halsey Boulevard. And that's the way that the other properties that are to the north of this house have been addressed as well. And so what you can see is that there's a garden, that the building sits tighter to the north property line, and there's a garden. There's a rear access to a garage that's below base flood elevation. And on the Halsey side of the property, you have outdoor space. Next slide, please. And here you can see the site plan relative to the first floor plan. Next slide, please. And then as you move up into the house, you have living on the elevated first floor, and then you have bedrooms on the elevated second floor, and then the attic space is the master suite. Next slide, please. This is the elevation that faces that private drive, and this is the side of the building that is the access, vehicular access, and the back door to the structure. Next slide, please. And this is the south side of the property. This is the side of the property that faces the garden. And you can see that we're introducing porches on the Halsey Boulevard side, similar to the other properties to the north. Next slide, please. And this is the Halsey Boulevard elevation. We have a wall that fronts the street similarly to the other properties. And then you can see the three porches actually that face the river. Next slide, please. And finally, this is the north or neighborly side of the building. We are introducing a few windows here. We have a recess at the center of the building to allow for mechanical that's elevated. Next slide, please. This is a streetscape showing the current streetscape without the building and then the proposed streetscape. Next slide, please. And these are some model shots of the structure. We've taken the artistic license of showing everything that's existing in dark and what's proposed in light, just to make a contrast. But the intent here is to work within the streetscape as much as we possibly can. Next slide, please. And the final page of model images is the rear elevation that fronts a private drive, and then an aerial view just to show how the building occupies a lot similar to the other properties. Kim, can you back up a little bit? One of the things that is requested when you're asking for additional height is to start to pay attention to materiality. So if you could go back to the elevation slides, that would help me. The proposal here tonight is to provide a brick base for the building with a Boral Dutch lap siding above. We're proposing to use Boss treated, it's a high-end treated product for the trim, and architectural shingles for the roof with some copper accents, and a Marvin clad window throughout the building. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have any, if you want us to move to a specific slide.
Ashley, what is your height in your kind of dark gray and white scape view? I think that's helpful. What is your height request when compared to that existing building to the left that also has a similar kind of, I'm going to call it top story porch, if you will?
So we're in a 3-story height district, and we're asking for 3.5.
Does the streetscape, the 2D streetscape, represent that accurately?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We did not have anybody signed up to speak, but I wanted to ask Ashley if any of the homeowners are online, because there's a couple of Colberts logged in.
Yes, I'm sure they are. I don't know if they prefer to speak or not, but they were planning on attending tonight.
Lindsay, could I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Ashley, the proposed finished floor elevation is a little bit above the DFE, right? Can you just talk that
That's
through?
correct. I'm sorry?
You just explain like what's going on there, like why?
Why it's really honestly, because we have to elevate. Ideally, you would make enough clearance to create garage doors on the backside of the property.
So if with this extra foot, what the clear height and the ground floor would be what?
The garage doors right now are only 7 feet 6 inches tall, so that's pretty low for a garage door.
Okay.
Julia, did that answer your question?
enough. Yeah, sure.
And hearing no other public comment, Kim, if you'll give city staff comments and recommendations at this time, please.
Aside from the extra foot above DFE, BAR staff believe the provision in the ordinance for requesting an additional half story is precisely for projects such as this one. And we feel that the proposal meets the test for context with non-compliance of many neighboring buildings. The ordinance also requires that the applicant meet architectural merit, and that should be conveyed by the design and materials, and these should be adjusted to meet the requirements. The bell curve of the roof is a great element. The exaggerated overhang should be slightly reduced. The mold windows should be separated. Garage doors need further details and specifications. And I think you've changed this, Ashley, but vinyl windows are not permitted, and aluminum clad would be approved in this location. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff, and just to take a look at that extra foot for those garage doors. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Ashley, did you want to respond to anything raised in the staff comments?
Sure, we can consider all of those comments. I think that the issue with the DFE is that if we do lower the overall height of the building to sit the first floor at DFE, we would have a condition where those garage doors would probably have to break that band on the rear portion of the rear elevation. So, I mean, I think that that's something we would have to work through. But the windows, Kim, we were intending to use a vinyl clad product, not a vinyl window. It's a Marvin product, Pinnacle. They're pretty nice windows.
Okay,
but in I think if the board wanted to consider the vinyl clad windows, the Pinnacle windows, and we can consider the reduction of the overhang and those things in our next submittal.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. In terms of the conceptual design, I think it's simple and clean, and it does seem to relate to its neighbors. You know, the zoning question is tricky and complex, but I do think that the context certainly seems to invite 3.5 stories. So if context is a determining factor, I think that is certainly in their favor. Architectural merit, I don't know, it's a little trickier proposition, but you know, in my estimation, context alone sort of is sufficient. Couple of minor comments that to me, like the identity on the Halsey Boulevard side, the front. Kim, if you could go to that.
Side?
The Halsey Boulevard, the west front. Just the identity of that fenestration versus if you'll switch to another elevation. There seems to be kind of a pretty stark difference between, you know, just the undivided lights on the French doors versus the divided lights and the shutters on the side elevations. So I don't know if there's a way to sort of unify those, either maybe just by adding some divided lights on the French doors or removing the shutters and simplifying the windows on the side elevations. That was the thought I had. And on that top floor that you're requesting, I don't know that we would ever see a hot tub or have any purview over a hot tub, but if you could just maybe remove reference to that for the final drawings that BAR would be would be endorsing, that would be good. And in terms of vinyl clad windows, I mean, I just know as long as I've been dealing with the BAR, those have not been permitted to my knowledge. Whereas metal clad or even fiberglass clad definitely have. So that's always been my understanding, but I'm open to discussion. But that's all I've got, I think. And then the extra foot, you know, I would say, I don't think there's any reason to have more than like 7, 8 clear height in that garage or something like that. And then we just generally try not to exceed what FEMA requires. So if there's any way to pull that down, I think that'd be helpful.
Julia, just a quick comment, and because you just addressed it, and it was a question I actually had for you. You were struggling with the architectural merit, and part of that is utilizing the highest level of materials. And so I wanted to hear your input on the vinyl clad, which you gave. That was just an addition.
Right.
Are you, Julia, are you? Okay. I am not going to take long because I am pretty well aligned with staff and with Julia on what has been said. A few additional comments that I had made were, or I will say that scale wise, I think that this house absolutely does fit into the streetscape there, and I guess a bit of unconforming or non-conforming neighboring structures that exist. So I think that scale wise, it certainly in my mind does merit the height request out of scale. I do think that the quality of materials really should be bumped up a little bit if you're asking for a half story. And I would hope not to water down the elevation that has the shutters on it, because I'm pretty sure that is fairly visible as you head north on Lockwood, isn't it? So I think the detailing of all of those French doors, or all of the doors on the Halsey side, needs a little bit of study and thought. Yeah, I mean that becomes a pretty visible face, I think. And so I guess my final comment is to Ashley's detriment for being honest and putting a hot tub on the roof. But a visible hot tub on the roof does not merit architectural reward. So if that is an honest plan to put a hot tub up there, that railing and the detailing of that absolutely does need to be rethought, because seeing a hot tub and beach towels up on that roof would really kind of frankly just be bad. And that's a polite word from what I'm thinking. So.
The overhangs, staff mentioned that they thought the overhangs were a bit exaggerated. And I don't know about zoning setbacks, but I think the zoning ordinance only allows like 12 inches of overhang into the setback. So that might be worth looking at for a couple of reasons. All right, I think I'm about ready to try to make a motion.
May I make a motion request? Can we just think through, Julia, that railing detail? I want to be careful that we don't see a hot tub up there, to be honest.
Okay.
It looks like a hot tub. I'm on myhottub.com right now, and a hot tub is minimum 30
coincidentally?
What's that?
Just coincidentally, that's what you're doing.
No,
right?
I pulled it up like to look, and so it appears that the hot tub height would be rail height, and so if you had a cover on top of a hot tub, let's say, you would visibly see this up on the roof. So I think we either need to nip that in the bud or figure out a detailing of that rail or something.
Okay.
And again, Ashley, I'm not trying to penalize you. I'm glad you're being honest, because I think it just needs to be dealt with through detailing.
Okay. So, all right, how about a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and a board comment to minimize the extra elevation above DFE. And another board comment to ensure no future visibility of a hot tub. And another board comment to restudy the Halsey elevation to unify the fenestration with the side elevations.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And 3 board comments. 1, to minimize the extra elevation above DFE. The second, to ensure there is no future visibility of a hot tub. And 3, to restudy the Halsey elevation, to verify the fenestration with the side elevations.
Unify the fenestration.
Thank you. Kim, did you get that?
I did, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a second for Julia's motion?
You do, yes.
I'll put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank y'all.
We have come to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?